From the dugout to the college admissions board, this is where the next generation of talent is forged. Welcome to the Recruiting Roundtable.
Hello, welcome to the Recruiting Roundtable. This is Mike Silvestri, founder and owner of Florida Diamond Recruiting Services. Today we're going to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do, and then get into the state of college baseball recruiting along with college softball recruiting and how it is in this current landscape that we're in today. Florida Diamond Recruiting Services is a coast-to-coast organization. We help place and assist both high school baseball players, junior college transfers, four-year transfer portal guys, along with the same for softball, high school softball, JUCO softball, four-year transfer portal softball girls, in finding their new home or a present home to continue both their academic and collegiate baseball and softball careers. Our staff goes coast to coast for the most part, up and down the eastern seaboard. We've placed players from as far away as San Diego all the way to New York. And right now, what I'd like to talk a little bit more about is kind of who we are in a brief summation. All our guys that we have working for us and girls have an extensive collegiate background, whether it's playing, coaching, at the professional levels, collegiate levels. We have, I believe, up to 5 World Series rings on staff and currently 10 staff members that are assisting players in finding their forever homes or new homes at the collegiate baseball and softball landscape. To date, we have a 100% success rate as far as placing players, and obviously assisting junior college players as well get to their four-year schools, from high school to JUCO to four-year. So where are we at today? And why was this business born? This business was born out of necessity. This is something I've been doing for 30 years. A lot of our guys have been doing this for 30 years, 25, 30 years. And it was more born out of being able to be able to vet the proper potential clients. They can vet us as well, get our backgrounds, make sure we're a good fit, and then really use our network. And the key to our process here is I believe this is something that kind of separates us from others, is our evaluation abilities. It's what we do every day. Most of us have pro scouting backgrounds that when you're doing that, you evaluate every day. And our job now has changed a little bit with the college landscape and the transfer portal and how things are going and the reduction of college roster spots at all levels. Back when we first started doing this, and 20 years ago, even as recently as 3 years ago, it was finding the right home for a player for 4 years. And if it was on the baseball side, then we were talking about if you were good at, if you were going to be a pro guy, the draft would find you after your junior year or after your senior year. But finding a home for that player for those 4 years, that idea has changed. And whether it's a 4-year school or a 2-year school, it's now finding the home for a player where that player can impact a roster as a freshman. And let me explain to you why that's evolved into this method that we have now. Everything starts at the top in life, and college baseball recruiting is no different. The pinnacle of the sport is what? It's Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball post-COVID reduced the amount of teams or minor league affiliates that each team could have. So for example, most of the 30 major league organizations, they would have 2 teams in the Dominican Summer League, which those guys are professional players. They've signed a bonus, they're getting paid. They then matriculate to the states. So if you're a West Coast-based team, usually your spring training is going to be on the West Coast in Arizona. A lot of the East Coast teams are still here in the old Grapefruit League in Florida. So those players would then matriculate to what we call Complex League Baseball. Back then it was called the Gulf Coast League or the Arizona Rookie League. It's now called Complex League Baseball. A good portion of teams had 2 of those teams. So you had 4 entry-level teams for young players per organization. That's 120 teams right there. Then you had short season baseball. What is short season baseball? Short season baseball was the Pioneer League, the Appalachian League, the Northwest League. Those leagues were that college player that was drafted as a junior or drafted as a senior. That league started back when the draft was in June. That league started a week after to 10 days after the draft in June. Those college players would report to those leagues. The second-year high school players, if they were ready, would matriculate from Arizona or Florida to those leagues as well. Those leagues are gone. There is no more short season league baseball. So you're talking about, at the very least, an additional 30 opportunities, 30 teams of less playing opportunities at the pro level. So where do these players go? Well, they're going to college, and they're staying in college. And with that being said, we now have the idea where Division I sports, like the rosters have been reduced at the baseball level from, in theory, what was 40, and really it was more than 40 with red shirts and medical red shirts and so on, with players getting hurt or just not ready to play. It's now down to 34 and a hardline 34 players. What does that mean? Where's everybody going? At the very least, if we do the math and keep it very simple and very even, if we're going to say there's approximately 300 teams, and there's actually, I think, 305 or 6 Division I teams that play baseball or softball, and we multiply that by 6, let's just say it's 300, that's 1,800 roster spots. I would say it's fair to say you can add at least another 500 to 1,000 roster spots of those red shirt type players that were there as well, above and beyond the 40-man roster. So we're looking approximately over 2,000 roster spots at the highest level of amateur baseball, college baseball, that are no longer here. Where are these players going? These players are now going to Division II baseball, to junior college baseball, and we'll get into the different levels of junior college baseball because there's 3, to NAIA baseball. So the supply is as great as it's ever been of players, and the demand is probably as low as it's ever been because of the reduction of roster spots. This is where a service like ours comes in. And this is the idea of being able to evaluate, project, and get that player, that family, to the right spot, both academically, or all academically, geographically, financially, and as important as anything, athletically. Getting them to the right spot so we don't see the goal for our clients is to not see what you see on social media where there's been a decommitment or a reopening of recruitment. Especially, we saw a lot of this from the 25 class. I mean, we're here in December of 2025, and there's a lot of 25 class players that went to 4-year schools that are now looking for a home for this January. What does that tell you? The first question I would have is, how did you come up with that opportunity in the first place? Because clearly that was not a good fit. Whether it's academically or athletic or whatever it may be, now you're looking for a home again. So one of the things I think that we're, our target in this new landscape of college athletics and baseball and softball is finding the right fit immediately. Where can this player impact a roster? And it starts with one question. And if we get the one question answered, we can then move to the next part of the process. Can you help that particular college win a baseball game or a softball game as a freshman? If the answer is yes, then we can start the process of, does it fit academically? Does it fit geographically? But that question has to be answered before we go to the other parts, because there's no more waiting and developing. With a 34-man roster in baseball, for example, approximately 17 to 18 of those players are going to be what? They're going to be pitchers. They got to get through the season. Guys are going to get hurt, of course. Guys are going to get sore, miss a start, miss a bullpen rotation, whatever it may be. So over half your roster is going to be pitching. That leaves anywhere between 16 to 18 position players left to round out that roster. So roster spots are tough to come by, meaning if you're there, you're not there to get your 20 at-bats and develop. You're there to contribute right away because you got to be able to play because there's less players helping to win baseball games or softball games. So our job, again, it's been a very fluid situation over the last 2-3 years. The 25 class was the first class that, from a baseball standpoint, that experienced a different change of a recruiting timetable, right? That was the first class that went through the August 1st contact period after their sophomore year, heading into their junior year, that summer. That was the first one to do that. What did we see as a result? We saw August prospect camps. Those camps didn't exist before. They were generally in September, October. But now, if coaches can't talk to a player or have direct communication with a player, how do they get to know the player? It's no different than, going on a first date. You got to make sure you like each other to get to the second date. So you saw the advent of that 25 class that was really, do we attend these prospect camps? Do we not? And the answer generally is, if there's interest, yeah, you do. Because that coach has got to meet you. You got to meet that coaching staff as well, see the campus and see if it's a fit to get to the next step, if there's going to be an offer and maybe a commitment down the road. That was part of that 25 class's first change in everything, was the contact period and then those camps that have popped up now. Then that 25 class the following summer, I believe it was August 1st, was the first one to be impacted by the 34-man roster limit. And what that did was that took that 35-man roster guy to 40-man roster guy, it took that person, that player, that student athlete that was a developmental guy. For example, the left-hander who doesn't throw hard, but he's successful. Maybe the velocity is going to come. We could bring that player along slowly, 10 innings, 15 innings, maybe even redshirt him. Those spots don't exist anymore. So you saw that 25 class, a lot of players that were Division I commits have to completely reopen their recruitment because they were being told, we don't have that 35 to 40-man roster spot anymore. We lost 6. You got to go somewhere else. Where did those guys go? They went to D2 for the most part, and they went to junior college. Whether it was JUCO Division I, which is 25 scholarships at tuition, books, fees, room, and board. Here in the state of Florida, we have 18 of those, I believe. Whether it's Division II junior college, which is just, they can offer tuition, books, and fees, 25 total. That doesn't mean that they have 25 total to give, but they're allowed to give up to 25. In Florida, we have 6. There's a lot of Division II junior colleges up the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, in the Maryland system and so on, that are great programs. And then there's Division III junior college baseball, which is really more geared towards a lot in the Midwest and a lot in the Northeast. California is kind of their own entity with how their junior college system works because it's a non-scholarship situation for the most part. So the trickle-down effect forced all these players from the upper levels to find new homes and eventually get back. So is it a good time to be a high school player? It's a good and bad time to be a high school player, whether it's softball or baseball. The good part is you have freedom of movement. The transfer portal has provided that, right? There's a December 1st transfer portal that opens up for 2 weeks. And players can't go from Division I to Division I, but they can go from one level to the next and still be eligible. Then we have the transfer portal that starts in the summer, depending upon the dates of when the college season officially ends before the postseason begins. I believe this year in 26 coming up, it'll be June 1st. That's another scenario where a lot of players are going to be looking for homes. I think last year's numbers were over 6,000. Don't quote me on that because it's a little hard to track at certain times, but the numbers keep growing exponentially. The issue is a good portion of those players don't find homes. Do we assist with transfer portal players? We do. One of the things that we really focus on here is the ability, like I said, we talked about that earlier, the ability to evaluate. And I think nailing the evaluation and then projecting in 2 different terms, projecting short term, impacting a roster as a freshman, or impacting a roster coming out of junior college as a junior, and then potentially what the long-term scenarios are. And sometimes in today's landscape, the long-term's a little bit fuzzy because of the transfer portal. But for example, when we get information of the client's interested, and we have a contact information form, people find us through social media. Obviously, referrals are our bread and butter because when you're successful to date, we have placed 100% of our players. Everyone has gotten an offer and been placed since the inception of this program that we started back in January of 2022. So, and we're fortunate with that, but there's a lot of hard work that goes into that, and there's a lot of keeping up with the rule changes and being fluid with our process as college baseball recruiting and college softball recruiting continues to be a fluid landscape. But first and foremost, it's the evaluation part. And when that client comes to us and fills out a contact information form or sends an email or whatever they're going to do to get to us, the first thing we do is we do a call. Prior to that call with that family, and we'll generally do a Google video call, but prior to that call with that family, there's going to be some background work. Today, you can Google a player's name, you can pull up 4 or 5 different websites, whether it's Perfect Game or PBR or their high school statistics website, and you're going to find some video on that player generally. You'll find their Twitter page, you'll find their Instagram page. So we can, if we're not familiar with who the player is, we can get a background. Then the second part we'll do prior to our call is we're going to go ahead and make some calls locally, get a feel for what this player is. We're watching video, we're breaking this down. Again, we do this every day. This is what we do as evaluators, as professional scouts, as college coaches, and so on. So we're accustomed to being able to break down things from maybe not an in-person initial evaluation. And that's come with experience and over time. Once we've got a good feel for who that player is, we set up the Google video call with the family. And then from there, we talk about what our thoughts are, what the family's thoughts are, geographical preferences, how that's going to work and how that's going to fit academically, financially, and give them a really nice broad view of what a plan would be for their son or daughter. And then make sure that the key component to all this is we're managing expectations. If we feel the player is a junior college player and the family and the player feels that he's got to be a Division I player and it's the SEC, obviously that's a huge gap. And that's probably not going to be someone that we're going to agree to onboard as a client and or vice versa. And that's okay. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But at the end of the day, the only way this works is having a commonality amongst what the expectations are for the landing spot of that particular player. So once we establish all that, the process begins. And it's depending upon the year. We are seeing, and I think it's an interesting trend, more and more freshmen coming on board. That wasn't the case. And I actually discouraged that when we first started. And I've embraced it more now because the process takes more time now for the high school player. So we're seeing more and more freshmen come on board where we can watch their development, kind of see their attributes, what their tools look like, what the body looks like, what the projections look like, and then know when it's go time to make their video, to start marketing the player. And the things that we do, as far as marketing our player go, again, we've targeted certain levels, we've targeted certain geographic regions. We've given the player a tool through a college database where we'll be very specific. We want you to research this conference, this state, these levels, because we've agreed that those are levels and states that they're interested in, and we'll give them very specific research these schools, see if the majors are fit. We have that ability with our database that we have here at Florida Diamond Recruiting Services that we can narrow the focus. As we're doing that, and the timing's right, and I think that's one of the key components to marketing the player, we'll start scripting emails. We'll start potentially making their video if they're ready to be seen. That's the key component, is that player ready to be seen. And once we do that, now the marketing of that player begins. What there's no substitute for here, parents and players, I don't care what sport it is or anything in life, is production. You got to produce. You produce at a lower level, which is high school baseball or softball, or junior college baseball or softball, then we can start talking about producing at a higher level. No different than professional baseball. If you don't produce in college, generally you're not going to produce at the pro level because you're seeing better players more often. It's the same thing. If you're not producing in high school, it's kind of hard to predict the progress of how you're going to produce at the collegiate level. So, and that's kind of how our marketing of the player starts. We are an all-inclusive scenario where, because we're all coaches at heart and we all have backgrounds as head college coaches, high school coaches, pro coaches. I mean, every level we've got a Hall of Fame coach on staff. Because of that, we also will get involved in breaking down some video. Whether you're a position player or pitcher and saying, hey, your hand positioning, your trigger or your hand break on the mound needs to be more on time with your leg lift and so on. So these are things that I think make us unique because of our backgrounds. There's actually a player development side to what we do as we're talking to players. I can give you an example of talking to hitters about, just breaking down video as they're sending video to us that we may decide to use. We may decide to put on our Twitter page to promote the player. Like, hey, you're not starting your body movement to when the pitcher starts his body movement. How are we going to catch up to 93 in college? So those are some of the things that I think that we do that really kind of separate, because again, it's what we've done our whole lives. As far as the networking goes and trying to find the right fit for the player, we don't know everybody. It's impossible. We don't know every level of player. What we do know is if we don't know that coach, we're going to find a way to get to that coach. If it's a contact in pro baseball that we currently have a scout, or if it's another college coach or a former player. So we've had a number of players sign with schools, be productive, help those programs win, help themselves enjoy their college experience and get a degree, and so on, where we didn't know the coach initially. We got to that coach based off of our credibility, based off of a network that we have, and then we're able to present that player, and whether that player went to a camp or they just were recruited off of video, depending upon that school's situation with budgets and camp schedules and so on. So a few examples of what our process is like. We have different plans for different budgets, different years in school, whether you're a freshman or whether you're a senior. We're now able to, I discouraged in the beginning because we wanted to make sure we can get our guys placed. The freshmen in the beginning, I didn't think that was the right thing we needed to do. With the way recruiting has gone now, it's okay for a freshman to come on board. It's actually encouraged when they call us. We're getting calls from 7th and 8th graders to prepare. They want to be prepared when they're a freshman to come on board with us. Ideally, that freshman, sophomore year at this point, I think is an ideal time to start looking at a recruiting service to get some help. This is a really complicated process. It's not like it was, forget 20 years ago, forget 10 years ago. It's not like it was 5 years ago. It's different. We have a different plan for juniors. We now have a couple different plans for seniors. Where when we first started doing this, the idea of placing a senior who's come to us in October of a senior year was going to be difficult, especially as a non-pitcher. Today we are equipped with the results to prove that, with our commitments, to be able to take on that senior player, get him to the right spot, as long as the mind is open and they're willing to maybe explore different areas geographically and different levels of play to start their career. It could be a Division II JUCO in Maryland. It could be, and there's some really great baseball there, or in the Northeast, and then produce there and get to their 4-year program, whether it's D1 or D2 or NAIA or D3 from there. So we're equipped now to, and the proof's in the pudding, to handle the different years of school, the different levels of play, and the different timetables. And I think that it's a fun process. There's a lot of work that goes involved. I was talking to a Division I coach who's a dear friend the other day. He's a committee member. He's going to wind up being he's already in a Hall of Fame. He's going to wind up being in a couple Hall of Fames when he retires. And he said one thing to me that really stuck out. And this was 2 days ago on a phone call in the car. It was, Mike, he goes, we'll tell players that come to camp, if you got someone interested and they make you an offer, take it. Take it. Don't walk away. Because the amount of players looking for offers and the amount of offers that are out there, there's a huge discrepancy. And today for the high school player, start your career. Get it going. Go where you can impact a roster immediately. Like we tell our guys, if the dream is to play at a Power 4 and you're not ready to go to a Power 4, your avenue to get there, your pathway might be junior college, which is the traditional route. It might be going to a non-Power 4. And hey, if you produce and we tell our guys, what if you go there and you meet the girl of your dreams? You've had success. You don't want to leave. Everything's great. That's awesome. That's the old school way of doing things. Today, maybe you go to the non-Power 4 and you decide you want to test the portal because your velocity jumped or you've produced it in a really good level and there's a more lucrative situation. You're allowed to do that today. So while it's a tough time to be a high school player, it's actually a good time to be a college player, more so than ever, because of the portability of you being able to make moves. It's just getting to that point of being the college player. And I think that's where, if you don't know what's happening and you don't have the network and understanding of what's going on, it's really tough to do by yourself today. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it wasn't that hard. It is today, and it's going to continue that way. So I hope that educates a little bit as far as who we are and what we do, and a little bit of the state of college baseball and softball is the exact same thing. Keep in mind, when we talk about scholarships and we talk about schools are allowed to have 34 baseball or the numbers that they're allowed to have in softball or junior college or whatever, that doesn't mean schools are funded to that point. This isn't football. This isn't basketball. There's a handful of programs that actually turn a profit at the collegiate baseball level and softball level. When I say handful, probably on one hand. So because a school can offer 34 full scholarships does not mean they do. And I can tell you probably 90% don't. Not probably. It is 90%, if not more, do not. They don't have the capabilities. The administration can't do the funding for that. Not with all this NIL stuff and revenue sharing that's going on. You're talking about junior colleges. There's plenty of Division II junior colleges, parents that are out there that are great spots. Junior college is a much cheaper option, much more affordable option. If it's a Division II junior college, for example, they're allowed 25. That's the actual head count that they're allowed 25 tuition, books, and fees. Whatever their cost of attendance is for tuition, books, and fees, because remember, they can't offer room and board as a D2 JUCO, would be, for example, if it's $5,000. They're allowed to offer 25 times $5,000. That school might have 50 grand to give out because it's an actual dollar amount. That's not uncommon. That school has $50,000 to give out. You might get 2,000 here, 3,000 there, 5,000 there. This coach has got to fill a roster out on that. So don't get caught up in the amount of money that's available, right? Softball is the same thing. It's not uncommon to see softball scholarships still broken up, even at the highest levels of softball play at the Division I level. So keep in mind that because schools can or have the ability to by rule, doesn't mean they have the ability to by financially. Most schools don't. And that goes for all levels. Junior college, Division II. Division II is 9 scholarships. We have the best conference, in my opinion, based off of national championships in Division II baseball. The Sunshine State Conference just produces perennial contender every year for the national championship. Tampa's won the last few, and those guys do an unbelievable job there. They're allowed 9 scholarships, right? So when you say that, does that mean every Division II is funded at 9 scholarships? No, a lot are not. Some have 4 based off the dollar amounts. Maybe they get $400,000. 9 scholarships would be 9 tuition, books, room, and board. So if schools $70,000 a year, just take 70 and multiply it by 9, and you have what? You have $630,000. Not uncommon to have a school say you get $300,000 from their athletic department. That's less than half. They get 4.5 scholarships to give. So the other aspect that we can touch on before we end our first podcast of kind of educating people is academics matters here. Baseball and softball are still sports where at times there can be more academic money than the actual athletic money. So grades do matter because the ability to package an academic side along with an athletic side, ultimately a lot of times when you hear players that are on full rides, even in today's landscape, even at a Power 4 conference, we have one of these guys. He was able to take 40% academic money, 60% baseball money, quote unquote, there's his full ride. Because he's in a Power 4, he's getting some revenue sharing money. He's also he might be getting a little bit of NIL money at this point. But 40% of his scholarship money is coming from the academic side. So academics matters. It's still going to matter in our sport. It's always going to matter in our sport because most of our programs are not fully funded. So if you can package both and do the right things and have your 3.5 or 4.0 and that cutoff's kind of around 1,200-ish in the SAT, that's going to open up some doors for you academically for some free money that you've earned based off of your merit there, just like your athletic ability, whether it's baseball or softball. So, and that, again, I'll leave it with this. Junior college is the same thing. The JUCO guy who's able to go to, we have a couple now that are some really good programs in the Sunshine State Conference that because they did the right things academically, they produce, you have to produce. They produced on the field, they produced in the classroom. That package all of a sudden for a school that might be $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, those are sticker shock prices, all of a sudden shrinks down to $10,000, $15,000. That's doable for a lot of families. 90's not. 15 is. That's less than the cost of an average private school, Catholic school in most parts of the country. So, but the academic side kicked in a lot of that money. So make yourself attractive academically because that's going to create options for you athletically, both in the baseball and softball side. I hope we did a good job educating today and maybe answering some questions for you. We'll take in our next episodes. We're going to introduce our new head of our softball division. We'll be bringing on some junior college coaches, some Division I coaches, some Major League Baseball scouts that are colleagues and friends, some former players that have gone through our process, and some former players of mine, that I say players, clients, and then former players of mine and some of our other guys to talk about how their coach, who's now one of our recruiting advisors, impacted their lives and maybe what a junior college did for them or what the process was like for them and so on. And the cool part is some of these former players, we now have their sons as clients now because they understood how we impacted them and how things have changed. And just because they went through it 20 years ago, it's different now, but we're on top of this. So those will be coming up in our future episodes, and I hope you enjoyed our first podcast here at the Recruiting Roundtable. Thank you, and have a great holiday.
That's a wrap on this week's edition of the Recruiting Roundtable. Join us next time as we continue to guide athletes and their parents on the recruiting process on and off the diamond.